How's training going?
Training's been really good. My motivation is at an all-time high. There's been like a few things like that I'd seen on Instagram. I mean, actually, since following you, plugging and promoting your conversations and interviews, I've come across some more like really impressive natural athletes. And it's even to the point, even I get sort of sucked into that. Are they really natural? Whatever. But I
Yeah.
have to remember that when I started, I was giving everyone the benefit of the doubt. And I kind of want that reception as well. I want people to give me the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't care if they disbelieve me, but I still think it's a better way to be. So looking at these guys and drawing a lot of motivation from it. So because of that, my training's been better than it's ever been.
Oh, wow. That's really cool to hear, actually. So, out of curiosity, is there anybody in particular that really caught your eye that you've drawn specific inspiration from on the training side, or was it more of a mentality, motivation, as you mentioned, of course, but is it specific to anything detail wise or just the look of their physique?
It was more so like the look of their physique. I've just seen a lot more in general lately. I think because as my Instagram has grown, I've seen, there's been other guys that whether they have natural in their bio or, somehow I've come across the fact that they're natural, have followed me and checked out their stuff. And that's been motivating because I think a lot of these guys are in better shape or have more muscle mass, whatever it might be. There's something that I don't have, so it's kind of something to strive toward, not in a competitive way. And if I watch some of their training footage, for example, I think that's something that's been lacking because I haven't had the same motivation I had when I was in my early mid 20s. Seeing that again from these guys that are in their sort of mid to late 20s, I would say, see the way they push themselves, I've realized, yeah, I don't think I've been doing that, at least not as frequently. I'm not pushing myself nearly as hard as I could have been. So I started doing that somewhere in between when we last spoke and now, basically. And that's what then pushed me to want to do a couple more competitions. And I'm happy to say I got myself in the best shape I've ever been in at 32. So even in your 30s, it's possible to improve your physique, in my opinion, dramatically. I think there's a dramatic change.
Yes, yes. I saw that you did a contest. Maybe you can also touch on that, and then we'll circle back to, because I have obviously more questions about what we were just speaking about, but so I don't lose this thought. How was that contest? And I know that you placed first. It was an ANBF show? No, ABFF?
I did an ICN show and an ANB show. So they're both, this is the thing, they're both like natural federations. They say they're natural federations, but they never test me. I want to be
Really?
tested. And they never, yeah, that's the truth. And so people comment on my Instagram posts, whether they be trolls or they're genuine, whatever it might be, that disbelieve my natural status. There'll be people that comment in response, and I understand where it's coming from. They try and defend me by saying, well, he competes in drug tested natural federations. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's like maybe the federations themselves don't believe me and they don't want to test me or whatever it might be. But I want to be tested and they never test me. Every competition I've done in the last 2 years, I've had filmed by my videographer Madge and in hopes to be tested, and they don't test me. Not that I think that's like going to be what's going to convince people. I'd just like for that at least to be captured on camera anyway, and they never do.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't expect that from the ICN because Brandon Kempter, who I think, or was that Brock who I was speaking to, or maybe it was Pete Hartwig. Anyways, there's not that many top level guys in Australia that I'm aware of, but a gentleman by the name of Brandon Kempter, he competed in the ICN, and that was never brought up. Not that I asked, but I would have expected a show like that. I mean, it's pretty big, no, the ICN, so that's quite surprising.
In Australia, it's got to be the top natural federation at the moment.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So do you have any aspirations to maybe compete in some of the organizations that do test, like the WNBF or the PNBA, which is where the Olympia, the natural Olympia, at least the biggest natural Olympia, you could say, within all the natural orgs? That's the thing with the natural pipeline. There's too many organizations. It's one of those things where you kind of have to test it out, maybe experiment and see which one you like. But do you have any thoughts on competing in some of the other orgs that are more popular?
Yeah, I mean, competition to me is still, even though I'm 32, it's still relatively new to me. I did compete in my sort of mid to late 20s, just a handful of times, but I'm not really familiar with all the federations. Until recently, someone suggested that because I came first in ICN and I came first again in A and B after competing with them last year as well. Someone said, why don't you compete in this? The level of competition is a little bit higher. And I think that was one of the federations you just mentioned. So I do believe it's a natural federation that they test. So I'd be interested in doing that, but I'll definitely look at competing more next year. So I might even do a handful of different federations.
Nice. Pete Hartwig competed at the Natural Olympia. That's why. And I know you guys are are buddies, right? So he didn't mention
I didn't even know he did that.
Oh no? Yeah, he
I didn't know.
He, I'm pretty sure the posing routine with the rose. You ever caught that one online?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the Natural Olympia. But I mean, if you're not asking, hey, what contest was that? I mean, it's more like you see the posing routine. It's really nice. If you weren't interested in the competition side of things, it probably wouldn't have even come up, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, you just watch the footage and appreciate the physique. You don't tend to ask what federation, what did you place? You just double tap.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So let's rewind for a second. This is fascinating to me. And I'm really happy to hear that the podcast even is generating encouragement and motivation for someone like yourself, because that's really cool. Like, it's not just newbies or beginners. Like, I'm even getting 50, 60-year-olds who are still competing and still doing this that are messaging me saying that the podcast is inspiring them. And that's really fun to hear. I'm curious, is there anyone specifically that caught your attention? Like, do you have any names?
I don't know if I could give you names because that would have been a few months ago. And for the life of me, I'd have to go have a look. But in saying that, there was a couple of guys, maybe I went through their profiles and had a more thorough look. And you can see, like, I think it's just one of those moments where comparison could have been the thief of joy.
Interesting.
But I had to sort of give myself a bit more credit in that moment. Do you know what I mean? I think I was just thinking less of my physique more so in that moment. Wow. But in saying that, like, these guys did have very good physiques, but it's like when you put a thumbnail up on, say, one of your videos, and you're obviously going to choose what you might think is the most engaging image of that competitor. And so that's what I thought. I was like, geez, that's impressive. When you take a more thorough look, sometimes you go, oh yeah, I can see how that is definitely natural.
Yeah. And also keep in mind, which I'm not just for you, but for the listeners, because what you mentioned was very important. It could be the thief of joy when you start to compare, and you have an incredible, like, you're the top, right? In terms of physiques, you're right there, right? So as far as what you're looking at and what everybody else is looking at, we're talking about the leanest physique that they've probably attained, especially if it's a stage shot, and the top 1%, like world champion type of physique, which is the genetic outlier. For example, someone like a Rob Hope, he's based in the UK and he won 3 world championships. That's the one who looks like Sergio Oliva from the back. I don't know if you caught his videos on YouTube are the myth, because he's like the natural bodybuilding myth, if you will, something like Sergio Oliva.
Yeah.
And his back shot it literally is unbelievable. Like, you do question, you're like, oh, this guy, you start to think like that literally looks like Sergio Oliva from back in that one picture. But, like you said, you're handpicking specific shots, specific moments of their career in their season. So
much like you mentioned, it's a specific shot, but it could be a specific muscle group that, like, my back is not my strong suit. So if I'm looking at someone else's back, it's quite impressive, even though I know I train my back just as intensely and frequently as every other muscle group. I start to think, well, it can't be that they're doing anything differently. I forget for the minute that it could just be genetics. Because if you compare my back to Brock's, for example, he has a far better back, but I might have a better chest. Just from a genetic standpoint, like where your muscle bellies insert and that kind of thing, it can really change the sort of immediate visual representation of that physique and make you start questioning whether someone's natural or not. But there's always telltale signs. There's like objectively notable markers of gear use. And I noticed, I would say 100% of the people that you've interviewed don't have those objectively notable markers.
Do you go into the gym with any form of anxiety where you have to do this exercise with this much weight and you have to beat it today, or like, is there any form of that?
No, and I do think that's purely because I don't give a shit about how much weight I'm lifting. Yeah.
Okay.
It's always about how can I get the most out of the least amount of weight. Whereas like, I know a lot of guys that